Do you remember 2015? I'm sure that seems like a long time ago to you, as it sure does to me. But anyway, if you want to take a trip back to me to May of 2015, we will revisit one of the earlier Unearthed Arcanas called Waterborne Adventures. And as far as I can tell, from what I remember, I haven't read it in a while, a lot of the content contained in there has not yet been reprinted. So if you want to see what was contained back then and my thoughts on them, stay tuned. Look, I have a water tile and an adventure. Waterborne Adventure. What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and let us just jump right over to it. So you can see it was released on the 4th of May the 4th, actually, in 2015. I also liked back then they gave us more background text. I feel like this whole section here, they gave us a lot more background text on Unearthed Arcana back in the day compared to what they do now. So this was basically, how would you create an adventure on the high seas? And it added some interesting stuff. So it added a Kryn-based Minotaur. So Kryn is the world of Dragonlance. I'll be honest with you, I know very little about Dragonlance. I watched one of the animated movies, and I owned the campaign setting for 3.5, and that's the extent of my Dragonlance knowledge. But anyway, it was a Minotaur race that I remember one of the original ones we saw was Eberron, and now we've had this one that gave us another race. So the Kryn Minotaur from back in the day had just a strength increase by 1. It did not get any other, or so strength by 1, and then either strength, intelligence, or wisdom by 1. But that was it, which obviously we know is not really how we do ability scores in 5th edition. It's usually a sum of a total of 3 points to an ability score, whether it be 2 to strength and 1 to another, or +1 to 3 different stats. You got Conqueror's Virtue, or no, that what we just talked about. Your speed was 30 feet. You had horns, which you could use your horns to do a melee attack that did a D10 damage. And your horns grant advantage on all checks made to shove a creature, but not to avoid being shoved. So you had advantage on any shove attacks with your horns, and you were doing a D10 just with your own horns without it needing any weapons. You had Goring Rush. When you use the dash action during your turn, you can make a melee attack with your horns, which again did a D10 as a bonus action. You also had Hammering Horns. When you use the attack action during your turn to make a melee attack, you can attempt to shove a creature as a bonus action. You cannot use the shove attempt to knock a creature prone. So you could dash as an action, bonus action, horn them. You could attack, and then as a bonus action, shove them prone. You could perfectly recall any path you've ever traveled, and you had proficiency in navigators, tools, and vehicles water. So this was very interesting because I want to just go to D&D Beyond and pull up our new final version of the Minotaur. I should have done this ahead of time, but I didn't, so it is what it is. It was interesting because some of that stuff made it through, like Hammering Horns. Immediately after you hit a creature with a melee attack as part of the attack action on your turn, you can use a bonus action to attempt to shove them with your horns. Then here they changed it to they must be no more than one size larger than you and be within 5 feet, and they need to make a strength saving throw or be pushed 10 feet away. Here you could it just said, oh, they said you can attempt to shove them. They just clarify the language. And they still have Goring Rush, and here is now immediately after you use the dash action on your turn to move at least 20 feet, you can make a melee attack with your horns as a bonus action. There was no limit to the distance, or that it had to be, no limit to the distance, and your horns got knocked down from a D6 or a D10 plus your strength modifier piercing damage to a D6 bludgeoning damage. I'm sorry, piercing damage instead of bludgeoning damage. So this was okay, and they did give us a nice table for Minotaur bonds. And, you might even still be able to recycle some of the names if you're playing a Minotaur. So that was something. We kind of still got probably a slightly better version in some respects now. But this is the thing that probably the most important stuff was new fighting styles, which is something we saw in the Unearthed Arcana class feature variants. But it was this concept of adding new fighting styles for any character that gets access to them to use. That would be the Paladin, the Fighter, and the Ranger all get access to fighting styles. So there was the Mariner fighting style, which was as long as you're not wearing heavy armor or using a shield, you have a swim speed and a climbing speed equal to your normal speed, and you get a +1 AC. So this was basically like the defense one that you got that gave you a +1 to AC, except this one gives you bonuses if you're not wearing heavy armor or using a shield. It also gave us the swashbuckler class, which I think for the most part, other than a couple of changes in names, for the most part remained the same, right? You still got your, what was this here? During your turn, if you make a melee attack against a creature, they can't make opportunity attacks against you for the rest of your turn. So they basically gave you the mobile feat. And then they add your charisma modifier to your initiative rolls. And then they gave you kind of, this is now, I think, rakish audacity. But this is, I think, just the French word for rakish audacity. All right, toujours. Toujours means, I think, today? No, it's du jour. I don't know. Anyway, I think for the most part, it remained the same. And then they had the sorcerer, the Storm Origin Sorcerer was in this as well. And this was interesting because they gave them sorcerer, like, bonus spells. And then they obviously they did away with that when they published it, but then obviously the new Unearthed Arcana has brought it back. And they had Fog Cloud, Thunderwave, Gust of Wind, Levitate, Call Lightning, Sleet Storm, Conjure Minor Elementals, but they limited it to only Smoke, Steam, and Ice methods, or Dust methods, Ice Storms, and then Conjure Elemental with only Air Elementals. And this was actually probably the most interesting thing, was this use of the word ribbons here, where they tell you that on the R&D team, any ability meant to convey flavor rather than a mechanical advantage is referred to as a ribbon, a thing that's mostly for show. Thieves' Can is a great example of a ribbon ability, and the Storm Guide also falls into that category. We don't weigh ribbons when balancing one class or option against another. For example, Heart of the Storm carries the power load at 6th level for the Storm Sorcerer, while Storm Guide is only there to show how the sorcerers can excel as sailors. It isn't meant to help in combat, but it's potentially very useful in maneuvering a ship. And that was the ability to let you kind of stop the rainfall, redirect the wind, that kind of a thing. I thought there was another fighting style in this one. That must be in a different document where they had the close quarters fighting one. But yeah, this is just an interesting take a look back at 2015 design to see that most of that stuff actually did make it into a published source, right? We got the Swashbuckler, we got the Storm Sorcerer, and we got Minotaurs all added in at a later date of multiple sources. But it's interesting to see that the... we got Swashbuckler and Storm Sorcerer were both in Sword Coast Adventures Guide, which was the one that was released shortly, within a relatively close time frame to this Unearthed Arcana, which again keeps that if they release subclasses and they do well, they're gonna put them in the book. And then obviously these were reprinted in Xanathars, and it took a little while to get the Minotaur published, but we finally did get it. But it's interesting that the only thing that kind of fell behind was the Sorcerer getting those bonus spells and the Mariner fighting style. I think that is something we need to absolutely have in a future player-based supplement, is more options to expand what we already have, right? So people can buy the base book and they can buy Xanathars, but I think it would do wonders. Like I said, I've talked about it before, to add templates for monsters so that I can take and add a dire template or a fiendish template to anything in any monster manual that I have. That then gives me double the amount of monsters, or double, because I could add fiendish. If it was just the fiendish template, I could add fiendish to every creature that's not a fiend and essentially double the amount of usage I could get out of that one book. And if WotC wants to focus on limited book releases, but also, bang for your buck, give me a book that's going to give me variants that'll allow me to tweak and alter and adjust the way I play with all the tools you've already given me, whether it be from a DM side or a player side. Now I have a whole bunch of new options to use. I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you guys remember Waterborne Adventures? Did you play either the Swashbuckler or the Storm Sorcerer way back when they came out? What about the Minotaur? Did you ever get a chance to play one of those with your crazy 1d10 horn damage right out the gate? Because that could be crazy if you were a Minotaur monk. You could just do so much damage because your horns would deal a d10 every time, and you could use them for all those unarmed strikes with Flurry of Blows. And have you used the Mariner fighting style? Is it something you still incorporate into your game? I don't really see the downside to adding the Mariner fighting style. I kind of like it. It even has like a little design notes on it, which I think I didn't read those, but we'll go read those right now. Fighting style is a good way to introduce a specific flavor of gameplay for multiple characters at once. In a sea-based campaign, you can expect lots of battles in the water and onboard ships. Swimming and climbing are very handy. The Mariner's AC bonus comes with conditions, but it plays into the restrictions a Mariner must observe to gain a swimming or climbing speed. In addition, a ship-based campaign lends itself to fighters who wield scimitars, representing a cutlass, and a dagger, who wear light armor. This specific AC bonus helps support those character options. Again, I would love more stuff like this where we get the design notes in the document to help us figure out what we want to do. Thank you again to my patrons on Patreon, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.